Before we get into this latest story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already.
The Blank Diaries. The great thing to be recorded is the state of your own mind, and you should write down everything that you remember, for you cannot judge at first what is good or bad, and write immediately while the impression is fresh, for it will not be the same a week afterwards. So advised 18th century writer Dr. Samuel Johnson to the man who would go on to write his biography, James Boswell. The conversation was about the importance of journaling, of keeping a diary, something that Johnson told Boswell he had 12 or 14 times attempted, but never could persevere. One reason, perhaps, why Johnson couldn't persevere with the journal is that he had plenty of other great works to write during his life. Journaling for a full-time writer may be something of a busman's holiday. Although Johnson, writer of almost all of the Idler series of essays, didn't hide the fact that he suffered from bouts of idleness, what he viewed as being idle in any case. He did, after all, get through quite a lot in his life. Whatever the case, in the 18th century, one didn't have to deal with ubiquitous digital distractions. So, in theory, those who had the wherewithal to write should have been able to find the time to keep a journal going, if they truly wanted to. Conversely, today's digital devices make it easier for anyone to write or even dictate a diary. So when just a few months back I first read those lines quoted at the start, taken from the straightforwardly titled Life of Samuel Johnson, I decided to start a diary that very day. It hadn't been in my mind at all, but I figured that if I couldn't keep a diary at this moment in my life, when I have lots of me time, then I'll never write one. Now, it's not the first time I've had a go at this. I vaguely remember a couple of attempts at writing a diary in my childhood, but, like Johnson, I didn't persevere. Years later, and with much more success, I kept a travel journal when I went on what turned into a 10-month trip around South America, New Zealand, Australia and Southeast Asia between 2008 and 2009. The impetus to do so came from my immediately older brother. He had done his own bout of global travelling, and he told me that he regretted not jotting down his thoughts. Considering I was constantly moving around, I figured at the time that the best way to securely write and keep such a diary would be as a draft email on my Gmail account. It has stood the test of time in any case, and it's now backed up in a Word document just in case it were to be accidentally deleted from my draft emails. It has proved useful in reminding me of what most likely would have been forgotten details from a period that had a huge bearing on the subsequent direction of my life. Only recently I was rereading segments as research for my work-in-progress memoir on my time in Colombia. I will concede, however, that a handwritten journal is more authentic. Reading it, flicking through its creased pages, one knows that it has served as a tangible paper crutch for the writer. It has been there with him, giving it an anthropomorphic quality. In comparison, a digital version seems rather lifeless. Yet, again for reasons of a practical nature, when I returned to journaling this year, it was to the digital domain I headed. Indeed, the arguments for going digital are stronger today than they were when I wrote the last entry into my travel diary some 16 years ago. Back then, I had to find an internet cafe or wait in a queue to use a hostile computer in order to type in an update. For the latter, use was often time-restricted, so I was writing against the clock, not the best environment when giving a deep disposition of one's coming of age, or, more accurately and less profoundly, when trying to remember details and write coherently with a delicate head the morning after the sketchy night before. Now, though, with a smartphone at hand and access to a Word document that automatically updates and saves previous versions across various platforms, maintaining a diary couldn't be simpler. It can be done from pretty much anywhere at any time, as long as one's device doesn't die. Nonetheless, rather than write immediately while the impression is fresh, as Johnson counselled, I've struggled to write an update even just once a week. One major factor for this, reflecting a particular fallow period I'm going through, is a predominant feeling of what's the point? Why take an hour or whatever out of my day to transcribe my thoughts? Couldn't I be doing something more useful and potentially rewarding with my time, like reading or socializing? Although I don't think I'm suffering from a lack of socializing of the beer-fueled variety in Colombia in any case, conversation light, as it often is, albeit. The idea that there is a cathartic element to keeping a diary is one strong reason to do so, and that's probably more important in these economically inactive times I'm experiencing. However, many of my blog articles over the last few years have been quite personal, diary-esque entries. So, in a sense, I've been writing a public diary since late 2011, presenting my heart and mind to the world, infrequent as the updates have been. At the risk of sounding as if I'm putting myself in the same bracket as Johnson, something similar might have been at play with him. Why double job? Of course, there is a lot more going on in my mind and, to a lesser extent right now, my life, than what I blog about. Equally, my social media posts offer little real insight into my state of affairs. This is where a private journal comes in. It allows for deeper introspection, should one wish to probe. And if one makes the effort to keep a diary, rigorous introspection should be a fundamental part of it, as good Dr. Johnson suggested. It's that making and sustaining the effort, however, that is proving to be quite the challenge. The words of another literary legend may provide extra motivation. "Nothing will come of nothing," said Shakespeare's King Lear. A blank diary is of little use to anyone.
Have you subscribed to this channel yet? If not, why not do so right now? It's free and only takes a second. Thanks!